Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the IceCaps Weekly Wrap. I'm Amy Johnson coming to you for the AHL Report. And the IceCaps certainly had a lengthy week last week as they continue their homestand in St. John's. They played 4 games last week, 2 games each against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms and the Hershey Bears, 2 teams that are towards the top of their division and very tough teams to play against. So let's get started taking a look at how the IceCaps fared. It was a bit of a roller coaster week, to be honest, and things kicked off on Tuesday night with their first game against the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. This game went to overtime, in which they lost this one 5-4, and it was a heartbreaking, disappointing loss for the IceCaps, as at one point in towards the end of the second period, they were leading this game 4-0. Goals were scored by Mark McMillan, Jeremy Gregoire, Jakob Delarose scored shorthanded, and there was a goal by Daniel Audette, who was able to break. He had had about a 27-game goal drought, and so he finally broke that drought and got back on the score sheet with a goal. And so things were looking up for the IceCaps. They were leading 4-0. Heading into second intermission, the Phantoms had been able to get 1 goal back, so they were leading 4-1, and then there was a bit of a meltdown in the third period. The Phantoms went ahead and scored 3 more goals in the third period, forcing overtime, and then towards the end of overtime, they were able to pot the overtime winner. It was a heartbreaking loss, to say the least, for the IceCaps, but they did at least get 1 point out of it in their playoff push. So then on Wednesday night, they returned to Mile One Center to take on the Phantoms once again. And this game also did not get decided in regulation time. This one went to the shootout. In fact, this was a much tighter game. This one was a 3-2 loss. Again, this was in a shootout. Daniel Carr and Daniel Audette both scored, and both scored on the power play. So the power play has kind of returned a little bit to where it was towards the beginning of the season. They're getting a lot more scoring opportunities on the man advantage, but those 2 goals just weren't enough, and they were able to tie it up to head into overtime. No scoring in overtime, and it took the 4th round of the shootout before anyone was able to score in the shootout, and unfortunately it was the Phantoms who did that. So they dropped both games against the Phantoms. However, they did get a point out of each of those games. So coming into Mile One Center on Saturday was the Hershey Bears, always a tough opponent for the St. John's IceCaps, and this night was the win that the IceCaps truly needed to get back on the right track. They won this one 4-3. Goals were scored by Julien Brouillette, Jeremy Gregoire yet again, Yannick Veilleux, and Keegan Lowe. And the goal, Lowe's goal to win the game 4-3 was a stunner. It looked like there was going to be a 3rd consecutive night that extra minutes were going to be needed. They were tied 3-3 with the Bears. And with about 16 seconds remaining, or just over a minute remaining, Josiah Didier gave Keegan Lowe a pass from point to point. Keegan Lowe ripped one from the point right past Phoenix Copley for the Hershey Bears for an emotional and very exciting win for the IceCaps. And so then on Sunday, when they came back into Mile One to take on the Bears once more, they were hoping to repeat that. The lineups stayed exactly the same, and the goaltenders on both sides of the ice stayed the same. However, the result wasn't quite what the IceCaps would have liked. They lost this one in regulation 2-1. It was a much tighter game. Phoenix Copley wasn't giving up anything, and neither was Charlie Lindgren, to be quite honest. But the puck luck seemed to be going in Hershey's direction. The IceCaps had plenty of scoring chances. Charles Hudon and Daniel Carr connected on numerous occasions, but just couldn't get the puck past Copley. Chris Terry rang it off the post a couple of times. One of those did go in on the power play. That was the only goal scored by the IceCaps, but it just wasn't enough on this occasion, and they did drop this one 2-1. So there were no transactions last week as we start to wind down the regular season. And looking ahead to this week, the IceCaps have 2 more games on the schedule this week. They are against the Binghamton Senators at home at Mile One Center. Both of those games are on Friday night and Saturday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. Newfoundland time. So be sure to follow along with our live game updates at the AHL Report on Twitter, where you'll also get updates about players and things going on with the team. And then, of course, check us out on Instagram for exclusive photographs at AHL Report on Instagram. And if you'd like to read up on our full game recaps and watch video interviews with coaches and players and staff and so forth, be sure to check us out online at AHL.report. That's it for me for this week. Thanks so much for watching. We'll be here again next week for another edition of the IceCaps Weekly Wrap. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Amy Johnson.